good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Top Producers Only Show, Ask Anything Automotive, every Monday at 6 p.m. We go live, professional problem solver, and one special guest. Tonight's guest is my dear friend, Scott Klein. Good evening, Scott. How are you tonight?
I'm doing great, man. Hey, I love that intro, by the way. That is awesome.
It's a cool intro, right?
Yeah.
Well, we made it specially for the group. This is only exclusively show for the group, so everyone from the group should feel privileged about being in your presence tonight. Scott, can you tell us a little bit about where you come from, what you do, and why do you qualify to speak on this show?
Well, let's see. I was born and raised in the armpit of America, also known as Flint, Michigan. Don't drink, right?
I use that as an example sometimes.
Yeah, right. So, hey, I was born with a 3/18-inch wrench in my crib, man. I mean, Flint's a big car town, so being born and raised in Flint, I mean, you're a car guy, right?
I'm so sorry to interrupt, but have you met Jackie Moon?
Jackie Moon. The name rings a vague bell. Who is that?
Jackie Moon is a character from the movie Semi-Pro, and Flint, Michigan is the town where the action takes place.
Right.
Well, that's Will Ferrell. Have you seen the movie Semi-Pro? You gotta see it.
That's one. That's probably one of the movies where I've seen a little bit and a little piece here and there. There's a lot of movies that qualify for. I've seen little bits and pieces, but I know I haven't seen that whole movie. But being that it's about Flint, yeah, you would think I've watched it, but I haven't seen the whole thing. But so anyway, I grew up in Flint, and most of the people that were born in that town, most of the people in that town were somehow related to the car business. I mean, when I was growing up, they had Chevy truck had a plant there, AC Spark Plug was there, Buick, Fisher Body. I mean, there was plants and shops and everything in that town when I was growing up. And because of that, most of the people that lived there were somehow in the car business. Now, my dad was actually one of the anomalies. He wasn't in the car business. He was actually a builder. But growing up in Flint, all the people that I hung out with, we were all car heads. And, my best friend, he was a mechanic. And I had other friends that were, mechanics. And I actually was a auto body repair tech before I actually got into sales. But when I graduated high school, I went to college for 2 semesters. I dropped out, and my first real job was I was a truck driver. I drove a 42-wheeler, baby. You ever been to Michigan? You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. So anyway, the company I was working for, they went out of business. I was doing auto body repair work also on the side, so that's kind of what I did. And then I got into sales by happenstance, really. In fact, I had a buddy. I'd moved to Florida. And I had a buddy that was one of my best friends that was a mechanic. And he called me up one day and he said, hey, guess what? I said, what? He said, I'm going to quit my job as a mechanic and I'm going to go sell cars, And at the time I was working at a dusty, smelly, dirty, grimy body shop. And we had this conversation, and this was back, in the early 80s. And we had this conversation for about 2 months, and I started thinking, you know what? Maybe I should go sell cars. Well, here it is 30-some years later. My buddy Carl, he never did do what he said he was going to do. And I went ahead and I got a job selling cars. So anyway, I started off in Coral Springs, Florida, basically. And I was in sales for 18 months. I got promoted. I was a used car manager, new car manager, finance director. I was a general sales manager. I owned my own buy here, pay here lot at one time. And now, as probably most of you know, I'm a recruiter and sales trainer for a group here in Atlanta since 2009. So those are my quick qualifications, if you will.
Yes, I think you qualify. If you guys have any questions for me or my friend Scott or anything that we're talking about, please share those questions in the comments. Feel free to comment and to ask anything as long as it's automotive related. So, Scott, what do you think? And I love your thought-provoking questions on Facebook. Sometimes you're asking questions, you're making salespeople think,
right?
And a lot of those questions are formulated in a way so they're fundamental. So there is a learning extraction out of them when you read the comments. So I love that style of learning and teaching. Tell me, what is your biggest challenge right now um, in recruiting and sales training in the auto group that you are?
Whew, man, the biggest challenge right now is finding. This is, I don't know if this is, it's really nothing new. I mean, this has always been a challenge, but I think it's more of a challenge now is
Mhm.
finding quality people that want to make this a long-term career. I mean, a lot of people, and I'll be honest, I was like this. You might have been like this too. I mean, let's face it. When and I always ask this question in my training classes, and there's always an exception to every rule, and there's an exception to this one too. But think about when you were 8, 9, 10 years old, or back in that time frame, and someone asked you, they said, "Hey, Velko, what do you want to do when you grow up?" Right? Or Scott, what do you want to do when you grow up? Hey, nobody says, "Well, I want to grow up. I want to be a car salesman, man." That's what I.
I'm sure there are some.
Yeah, well, yeah. The exception is you had a family member that is in the car business, and you want to follow in their footsteps. But everybody else wants to be a doctor, a lawyer, fireman, policeman, nurse, that kind of thing. So I was the same way. In fact, what I wanted to do was I wanted to be one of those guys that build roads and construction and that kind of thing. I was always fascinated with that. And I remember when I was asked that question, "Hey, Scott, what do you want to do when you grow up?" I said, "Well, I want to be one of those guys on the roads and building, architecture and all this, crazy stuff that they build out there." So nobody wants to sell cars. I mean, hey, at that age, you don't even know what a freaking car salesman is, right? So that's just not one of those things. So with that being said, when I got in the business, I was kind of like, well, I'm going to check it out. I didn't know if that's what I wanted to do for the rest of my life, but it was an opportunity. And hey, let's check it out. So what that brings, and you know this as well as I do, when people have that check it out mentality, it's what I call having one foot in and one foot out. And because you only have one foot in, you got the other foot out. If things don't go your way, or if you don't really like the hours, I mean, hey, we always tell everybody, hey, the hours are long. You're going to put a lot of time in here, but until they really live it, they don't really know what it's like. But my point is, because they're not committed, because they don't have both feet planted in the ground, and they're going to make it happen no matter what. It's easy to jump out, and that's one of the problems. So with that being said, though, the talent pool right now is probably the weakest I've ever seen it, and that's
Hmm.
the challenge is finding quality people that want to make this a long-term career.
What do you think turns people off from the car business?
Wow. What do you mean, like somebody new that's getting into it? So,
Because I've done a lot of recruiting, and the way I got into the car business, I came from Eastern Europe, so I came from Bulgaria, and I played with cars as I was growing up, but I didn't want to become car salesman. You're right, because it's a different business in Europe. I think America is the only country in the world that sells 18, 20 million vehicles a year. The other countries don't sell that many, and America sells 3 4 times more vehicles comparing to Europe, right? So it's not as massive, it's not as popular in Europe. But when I had my first encounter with a car salesman and a dealership, I knew that this is what I want to do for a living. I was like, these guys are wearing suits, they're driving a bunch of cool cars, they're getting commissions. This is
uh-huh.
awesome. This was my dream job. So
Yeah.
I had hard time finding a job 15, 20 years ago because nobody was hired. We were in the transactional age, and people wanted, dealerships wanted closers. They wanted
Mhm.
specific thick skinned people who can keep a secret. It was kind of like the mafia. We don't allow new people. We want only made men to come in. And that was my challenge. I went to probably 17, 18 dealerships before I got my first job, and I was rejected uh,
Hmm.
on my dream job. That was my dream, and I said that to everyone at the interview. They were like, "Well, I don't understand half of what you said, and I don't care. It's your dream. You don't know how to sell, so get out of my office." They were quite rude. And then
Wow.
one dealership gave me a chance, and here I am today. But the
Hmm.
whole point is this: what is turning off our potential prospects right now because I've interviewed some great talent while I was recruiting,
Mhm.
and some people, like the best candidates, don't show up on the next day. And I'm assuming that either their family member or friend talked them out of it because they committed on the interview. They said, "Man, I'm all in. I like the opportunities to make money. I like the whole thing." And on the next day, they don't show up. I call them. I follow up with them. I'm like, "Man, you're so good.
Mhm.
You would kill it." And they're like, "Man, I changed my mind. I'm gonna go into selling medical equipment or something else that is more boring." And you know, so what turns off these people? I have my own opinion, but I want to hear it from you.
Well, I think what turns people off is the 100% commission. I mean, people, and I think more today than like my generation, that they want some sort of guarantee. And I think, in my opinion, that's probably the one ingredient of why people are afraid or why people won't commit. That, hey, they'd rather find something that's got more of a guarantee. And you know as well as I do, when it comes to income, there's no better platform than being on 100% commission, because there's no cap, there's no limit on how much you can make. So with that being said, it really is the best pay plan that you can have. But a lot of people out there, they want some sort of guarantee. And again, I think it's a sign of the times that I look at the talent that's out there right now. And it's not just today, but this is going back for several years, because I've been doing what I'm doing now since 2009. So this is something that, it's worse today than what it was back then,
Okay.
but it's still a challenge where the talent is so lean right now. When I think back of all the people I've interviewed over the last 10, 12 years, I can really pick out several people that I'm like, that guy's going to be a rock star. That girl's going to be phenomenal. And they had a good background. They had a good sales background. They had a good game all around. And some of them we hired, and some of them passed and went somewhere else. But there was a lot of real good talent out there over the years, but lately, those people I'm talking about now, they're like, man, they're like few and far between. I get so many people that are 20, 21 years old. This is almost like a first real job. They've been working at McDonald's, they've been working at Wendy's, they've been working at their they've been working at Amazon, working in the warehouse, that kind of thing. Not that they can't do the job, and not that they can't be successful, but as far as hiring somebody that has more of a track record of those people that we just talked about, that, hey, if these people got in the business, they'd be rock stars, because they've got a successful path leading up to this point. And today, there's just not that many people out there.
Hmm.
Again, I did a hiring campaign last week. I spoke to, well, first of all, there was 60. I think we had 65 scheduled interviews. Not even half of them showed up for the interview. It was about 50% that showed up, and we made offers to 17 of the people. And out of the 17, I think 6 of them have already fallen out of HR because of the driver's license, or they just didn't really take the next step, kind of like what you're talking about. Hey, let's go ahead. We're ready to roll, man. We're ready to go ahead and sign you up and bring you on board. And they don't even take the next step by going online and doing the online application, and then they ghost it. They don't respond to you. So there was a couple of people like that. There was a handful that driver's license didn't was suspended, or they had a suspension the last 3 years, which our insurance company won't insure them, so we can't bring them on board. So with that being said, again, the talent that's out there it's tough, man. It's tough to find good, committed people that are going to be in it for the long haul.
Somehow, my mission is somehow to eliminate the shame and the guilt from being a car salesman, and that's why I encourage salespeople to build their own brands and to build their own pipelines of clients and to bring their own personality into the business, so they could be more independent when it comes down to opportunities. Because I never felt shame or guilt. As a matter of fact, I use that as a tool to get
Right.
attention for the clients, and to make myself unique and different in the marketplace by bringing those things that make salespeople feeling that shame or guilt. Uh, use that to proactively address those things with my clients, even at the greeting. So some great salespeople avoid being in the car business because of shame. Some things that they've never done, but
Right.
because of the client's perception or prospect's perception, they already feel ashamed to reach out and to tell people I sell cars, or to hand out their business card at a party.
Mm-hmm.
Take that profession and wear it, to take it as an identity. And
Yeah.
other salespeople who are in the gray area, sometimes they feel guilty, and they're like, they have conscience, and they make money for a couple of years, and that conscience drives them nuts, and they want to quit one day. And even though they have good thing going on, they leave the car business, and because they're not they don't really know how to sell, and they have to use those little tricks and tips from their management team, and they just don't feel that they're earning money in the most ethical way.
Mm-hmm.
So the other thing that I feel that it's a problem, and it's why people join the car business. So to me, there's three types of people. The first type are people that, kind of like you said, I got into the business to check it out.
Mm-hmm.
This business, I compare it to alcohol. you know if you don't respect, I don't drink for like a couple of years now, but I used
Uh-huh.
to drink. And if you don't respect alcohol, alcohol will kick your ass. It will always win. So when
Right.
people join the car business and underestimate the importance of development and training, and really putting in the 10,000 hours to become an expert.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of people from other industries, and they say, "Oh, I can sell cars. I can figure it out. Let me check it out. Let me see if I can make money." And they use the business. Then usually the business ends up using them, three times harder, and kicks them out. People that kind of check it out end up checking out of the
Mm-hmm.
business. The second type of people really join the business so they could become uh, some so they could become executive, because let's agree, the car business gives you the best opportunity to become an executive, to become a leader, to become a manager, as long
Mm-hmm.
as you're decent at what you do, and little organized, and you're polite, you have some people skills. Eventually, if you have consistent results, you'll be offered a job as a manager.
Mm-hmm.
And some it takes I think we're given the job too easy because of the desperation. We're offering the job too easy in order to
Yeah.
be a real estate agent. Real estate agents don't necessarily earn more than car guys, but they have to go for a license. They gotta buy stuff. They gotta buy into marketing. Like Remax is making them spend their own money into their own marketing,
Yeah.
and they're really buying into the profession. They're really going all in.
Mm-hmm.
And there's several other professions that are just requiring more from the executives. Like, if you in order to be a manager at a Holiday Inn, you got to go to school. You got to have like diploma, and you're gonna go to a 3 week training that you're gonna pay for, and
Mm-hmm.
then you're gonna qualify for a $67,000 salary a year to be a
Mm-hmm.
manager at Holiday Inn and deal with all the beefs of you know clients with unpleasant experience. So it's much easier and way faster. And the final group of people that join the car business are people that are really focused on the career path and eventually becoming owners of a dealership one day, and just wanting to go through all the steps and,
Mm-hmm.
and become a partner one day. So those are the people that actually make it long term. And it's just mind-boggling how many great people just pass on this opportunity because of the reputation we created, and because of the shortcuts we take. So
Mm-hmm.
what do you think could be done, so we can refresh the name of the car business, and attract better talent? Because I'm sure you probably tried to proactively grab some people from other industries at some point. Like, what makes the best prospect? A lot of recruiters like veterans. A lot of recruiters like people that come from multi-level marketing, or people that come from rental companies. Right now, Hertz is going out of business, and the other one. So they spend tons of money on training, and these reps are polite. So what do you think makes the best rep, and what do you think are the solutions so we can close on the recruiting part?
Well, first things first. Personally, I like people that have really no car experience. Number one, some sales experience, that's a good thing. Some experience in another venue. People type businesses, obviously, you know this as well as I do. People from the restaurant industry, when they make the transition into the automotive industry, a lot of them do real well. So that's always a good prospect to recruit. Someone that's in the services business, restaurant business,
Oh yeah.
customer service, telemarketers. Those people that have been pounding the phones for whatever product or service. They usually are good people to bring on board. But personally, I don't really like, and I know a lot of managers do, and I think the reason they do is because they want people that are turnkey. They want someone that's selling cars somewhere that is not happy where they're at, and let's bring them into our place, and that way we can just kind of turn them loose and they can go do their thing. But personally, I've seen a lot of people like that, and some of them work out and some of them don't. Most of them don't. They come in, a lot of them come in with baggage. They come in with their own set of rules, so to say, and there's always a lot of this going on with a lot of experienced people. And really, to be honest with you, I look back at the core group when I first got in the business. None of us had experience in the car business. None of us. And the core group that when I first got in the business, I mean, I could name off 5 or 6 people that started off with no selling experience in the car business, and they're owners now, and they're GMs now, and they have their own independent lots now. I can go on and on with one person after another that didn't have experience, that got into the car business and went on to have an extraordinary career. So with that being said, there's a lot of people out there that can still be successful in this business. But again, they got to have the right attitude. They got to have the right mindset. They got to have the right drive. They got to have the right motivation. And they've got to see the opportunity, which is pretty evident once you get in the business, especially for somebody that has been maybe working in a job where they're making 15, 16 bucks an hour. They feel pretty secure with that. But hey, at the end of the day, they're only going to make $35,000 or $40,000, and they come in the car business and they make 6 or 7 grand in 1 month, and they're like hooked, man. They're like, damn, that's crazy. They get hooked really quick, and they look back at their old job and say, hey, toodaloo, man, this is a great opportunity. And then if you get in the right store with the right avenues that can lead into other areas, and that becomes pretty evident as well pretty quickly when you get in the business. You start seeing opportunities where you can advance pretty quickly. I mean, I got promoted in 18 months, which is pretty fast, but I've seen people get promoted faster than that. So let's face it, if you want to get in this business and you want a career path where you can move up the ladder pretty quickly, there's not too many other businesses out there where you can start all the way at the bottom and move up pretty quickly.
Yeah, it's a phenomenal opportunity to make substantial income with no specific education besides learning people skills, presentation skills, negotiation skills. Those are all things that help you in life. So
right.
It's the best school ever. Okay, so let's move away from recruiting and talk about what are the current problems with the industry. With my calls with clients all over the country, everyone in the past week has expressed some concerns about inventory. Is that the same in Atlanta? Is that what you see with your dealers? And what is the situation where you at?
I haven't seen that problem, and I don't know. Maybe we do. That's just not my wheelhouse. So I don't think we've got an inventory problem from what I've seen. I've seen a couple of the videos. In fact, one of our GMs did a video from our Lithia Spring store the other day. He was talking about how many cars we got. So I don't think inventory with us is really an issue. It could be, it might be more of a regional thing or a state thing, depending on where you're located. I know, like the dealers in the Northeast area, I mean, they were shut down for what, a month, I think, some of them.
Yeah.
So they might be, I don't know. Did that make their inventory problem better or worse? If they weren't open, they weren't really selling any cars. Or not
Maybe
very.
it's just specific brands. I'm thinking Chevy and Toyota are struggling with inventory, so maybe it's just specific brands. A lot of the
Yeah,
luxury brands too, but many of the plants were shut down, during COVID.
yeah,
GM was building ventilators, so
yeah. And Nissan, they shut down for a while. I don't know how long, but so I know when they first shut down, everybody was kind of freaking out. But as far
yeah.
as I know, they're
I mean,
back and they're making cars now. So
it creates a natural demand when you have less inventory. The
mhm.
used cars are hot now as well, and dealers now are enjoying, especially here in the Midwest, they're enjoying a lot of demand, and they're able to hold some growth with because the inventory is light, and it feels good again. Some of them are running with half of their staff, so everybody's making a lot of money, is selling a lot of cars, and they're doing good now. Some of them are breaking records, and the uncertainty about the next 60 days is the only thing that bothers them. They don't know if they're going to have more inventory, what's going to happen. Are they going to lock the state again? I mean, you see what happened in Florida. They
Yeah,
opened up for a couple of weeks and then they locked it up again. Texas was saying, hey, we don't need masks, we don't care about COVID, and boom, they locked them up with mandatory masks. So it's crazy out there. But what do you think is another challenge that you see besides inventory? And if that's not really a challenge where you at, what else right now is preventing maximum performance?
well, I think it goes back to the same thing that's been going on ever since dealerships were selling cars. I mean, it boils down to the biggest challenge is bringing the best team that you possibly can to the field every day. That's it, man. You've been in the business long enough, and you probably you're around at more stores, I'm sure, than I am. I don't go around to a lot of stores, but I just converse with people on Facebook, so I hear what's going on. But what goes on is, and again, exception to the rule. There's always an exception to the rule, but the rule is every dealership out there is bringing their junior varsity team to the field every day. That's the bottom line. They're bringing their bench to the field every day,
Yeah.
and they expect to get A player results with D player performance.
Oh, I
So
love that.
yeah, so that's what and I always say that's what needs to be fixed. Everyone's like, "Well, we need a new lead source. The leads suck, and we need a different widget." No, you don't need a different widget. You don't need a different lead source. What you need to do is you need to fix your foundation. Everything starts at the foundation, and you build up on that. And your foundation is your guys in the field. That's your salespeople. That's the biggest hole that I see the dealerships have is they've got a sales force that is their junior varsity team that they're bringing out to go up against A players, and a lot of them get their ass kicked on a daily basis. And then they sit back there and wonder, oh, well, we need better leads. We got a lead problem, and they don't have a lead problem. They've got a lead follow-up problem, and they've got a process problem. That's what they need to fix first. Then after you fix that stuff, then you start going up to the next things and start looking at other possible issues. But I don't know why dealers and managers haven't really figured this out, because it's obvious as the nose on my face what the problem is, but they think there's something else that needs to be fixed. And I made this I put it on Facebook. This was a while ago, but I think it was about a year or so ago. But I made the kind of an analogy where this guy, it was like Albert Einstein kind of guy. And this guy, what he did was he went around to different dealerships, and he would spend a week or two in a dealership, and he'd be the fly on the wall. He wouldn't say a word. He would just sit back and he would watch everything that goes on. And he would sit there and take notes, and then he would move on to another dealership. Well, the guy did this for a whole year, and he would go to one dealership to another dealership to another dealership. He'd spend a couple of weeks, he'd take notes, and then after the year, he came to the conclusion. And his conclusion was dealerships do the same thing over and over again, and they expect a different result. And we all know that's the definition of insanity, right? So we're in, as a dealer body, we are insane because that's what we do. We keep doing the same thing over and over again, and we expect a different result. And I don't know why someone just doesn't get it, man. I mean, again, there's some exceptions to the rule. I think Glenn Lundy's a good example. He got it, and he took a store that was doing 150 to 1,000. How do you do that? You can't be doing the same things and expecting a different result. And I guarantee you that when he went in that store, he did a lot of things differently than what they were doing prior, and that's why they went from $150 to $950 or 1,000. So he got it, and I'm thinking, well, the answer is pretty obvious. You got to fix your foundation first, and after you fix that, then things will start falling into place.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Everything starts with the foundation. Speaking of this, when you hire new salespeople, what do you train them to do in their first month? Somebody that has absolutely zero experience, do you have like a specific schedule for them, or direction on what to do in the first 30 days?
Well, what I do and what actually happens when they get in the store are probably two different things. But when somebody goes through my training class, for example, it's sales training 101, how to greet a customer, what do you say, how to fact find, how to fact find correctly, kind of thing, how to do a service walk, how to do a trade walk, how to select a vehicle from stock, how to demonstrate and do a presentation on a vehicle, and then of course how to present the numbers. So that's basically what I do in a 4 to 5 day sales training class. And then after that, I lay out, okay, so what do you do when you get into the store? What's your game plan when you get out of this class and now you go to the store on Monday? Because hey, let's face it, and I tell people this even in the interview. I say, hey, look, being in this business, there's not a lot of direction. You have to be good at time management. Number one, you have to be good at how to spend your time wisely, because once you get on the floor, there's not a lot of direction. This is kind of like your own business, in that
Yeah.
you be motivated and you got to be determined that you're going to make something happen. And I tell people, hey, we're not a grocery store. We don't have people walking in all day long, and it's not going to be an endless flow of traffic. Most days you might get one person, maybe you get two. There might be days where you don't get anybody. If you're here for 8 or 9 hours, what are you doing in the times when your customer or customers aren't here? And in my opinion, that's the difference between an average salesperson and one that's going to be above average, is what are they doing in their downtime? And again, I lay out a plan on, okay, here's what you need to do. First things first is you got to have a planner. You got to have a daily planner, whether you get one that you write in or get one online. But when you come in first thing every day, you got to have a plan. Okay, here's what I'm going to do at 9 o'clock. Here's what I'm going to do at 10 o'clock. Here's what I'm going to do at 11 o'clock. Here's what I'm going to do at 12 o'clock. Hopefully what your plan is, you got appointments all day long, but as a new salesperson, they're not. So what do? Well, we got thousands and thousands and thousands of people that they can call in the CRM. They can go on to Facebook and they can start posting vehicles on Craigslist and that kind of thing. So those are things that we talk about and kind of lay out in class. But once they graduate, so to say, now they go to the dealership, that stuff's not reinforced. And then they see all the veterans, oh, that stuff don't work, right? So, that's the chaos that I deal with on a daily basis.
I think you're right on point. And it does start with the hiring, because in order for a salesperson to be active in their downtime, they have to really be committed to the profession. They really have to love what they do. They have to be committed to building their brand and just achieving their goals. So the average salesperson is not. And when they see a downtime, they use it for what it's designed to be used. They just relax in their downtime. They go smoke a cigarette. They shoot the shit on the lot. They talk about things that are not income producing. And that's really the same with entrepreneurs. 90% of entrepreneurs fail because they become entrepreneurs just for the fact so they can call themselves entrepreneurs. And if they don't work after 9 p.m. or on the weekends, chances are they're not gonna gain enough traction or enough momentum. If
Mhm.
it's not 24/7 for them, it's gonna take longer time for them to learn and develop and to make those mistakes. So we're going back to hiring because as a trainer, what I felt I cannot teach is that desire, that drive. I can't transfer my love for competition, and I can't transfer my love for breaking records to you with my energy. It doesn't matter how contagious it might seem. You have to have that in you. It has to be part of your character, part of your personality. And the same thing, I can't teach you how to commit to the business. Most salespeople just don't commit. When I started selling cars, I committed that no matter what happens, I will be doing this for 5 years. 5 years, and I stayed in retail for 7 because it was so good I couldn't leave. But
Right.
but 5 years was my commitment. Win, lose, or draw would be 5 years. No matter what happens, I'll stay in this business for 5 years. And it's so easy when you make that commitment.
Mhm.
Uh, so we have some questions from our viewers. My friend Adam Aarons is asking, he thinks that bad leadership is the reason why people don't join the car business. And also, he's asking you, how many people do you onboard into the sales department every year?
Who every year? Let's see. Um, well, we the group I'm with. We had 6 stores. We have 4 now, so it's less now than what it was. But I'm going to say each store is probably going to be, let's just say, I don't know, 3 a month on average, 2 to 3, somewhere in that range. So we got 4 stores, so 12 to 15 a month times 12. But here's the thing. You were talking about being committed, which, by the way, that's when people ask me, hey, why do salespeople fail in the car business? My answer is because they're not committed. Again, that's
Mm.
that 1 foot in, 1 foot out kind of thing. The reason they don't make it is because they're straddling the line, and when things don't go the way they want them to go, then it's an easy checkout. But if they commit, if they have both feet in, if they burn the boats and there's no plan B, they have to be successful. There's just no doubt about it. I give this example in my classes about this of what commitment really looks like.
Yeah.
And the example I give is, suppose you go to a doctor one day and you get in front of the doctor and the doctor says, hey, man, I got some good news and I got some bad news. Which one do you want to hear first? Most people want to hear the bad news, right? The
Yeah.
doctor says, hey, the bad news is you have a terminal disease and you are going to die in 90 days. You're not going to see your family. You're not going to see your loved ones. You're not going to see anybody. You're going to be gone in 90 days. Now that's a death sentence, right? That's about the worst news you could get from the doctor. So, doc, what's the good news, man? What's the good news? Hey, the good news is there is an antidote. There's an antidote. What is it? Here's the antidote. Here's what you got to do to save your life so you can see your friends, you can see your family, you can see your loved ones. All you have to do is sell 60 cars in the next 90 days. That's it. That's 20 a month. In the next 90 days, you got to sell 60 cars. Now, if that was a real diagnosis and you were just diagnosed with that death sentence, do you think that you would find a way to sell 60 cars in the next 90 days? I don't think anybody listening to me right now would say, oh, no, man, I'm going down. There's no way I can do that. No, because you're going to commit. You're going to have both feet in. You're going to work 24/7, 365. You're going to get your friends. You're going to get your family. You're going to be out there on the street corner passing out flyers, passing out cars. You're going to do whatever it takes to get 60 cars in 90 days. You know what will happen? You'll probably sell 60 in a month and a half.
Yeah.
So that's commitment. That's what it looks like to me. Is there's no plan B. You gotta torch the boats and commit. And if you do that, you'll be successful. You'll find a way. And what people do is they check out too easily, and it drives me crazy. I mean, that's one thing that, because again, I've been doing this long enough to already know when somebody comes on board. I already know what's going to happen. They're going to run up against something. They're going to think, oh man, this ain't for me. And I tell them, you can't. You're gonna run into a wall. It might be in a week, it might be in a month, it might be in 2 months, but you're going to come to a crossroads. Everybody does. I can name 2 or 3 people that hasn't, but you're going to come to a crossroads where you're going to think, hey, do I stay or do I go? And what most people do is they go, and that's not being committed. That's quitting, and you can't do that.
I agree, my friend. Now let's go over the process a little bit. What do you think is the most common mistake salespeople make at the greeting?
Wow, most common mistake is here it is. They just don't practice and drill and rehearse it enough to where when they finally get in front of a customer that they got it down.
Do you think the greeting is that important? So they have to practice it? You're talking about practice? Not the game. Not the game. Practice?
Yeah, practice, drill,
not the real game.
Yeah, I mean, hey, let's face it. What's the most important step? Is it not the greeting?
I think it's the greeting. I think statistics are saying, based on clients' opinion, that 90% of the decisions when the client decides I'm not going to do business with that dealership or that salesperson is because of the first 2 minutes, the way the first 2 minutes go. So that's
with that being said, the greeting is the most important step, because if you bomb the greeting, you're not going to another step. That's why I remember when I first got into business, the training manual that I read, that I was trained on, it said the demo was the most important step. And that's kind of how I evolved in the business for all these years. Was I always thought the demo was, but I finally had this epiphany, like, no, man, it ain't the demo, it's the greeting. Because if you bomb the greeting, if you don't do a good job in the greeting, you're not even getting to the demo. You're not even fact finding. You're done.
When I was selling cars, I literally mastered each step. So I spent time on getting to learn everything about each step. And when I became a trainer, it was funny because I would start speaking in front of the team, and I would be like, the greeting is the most important step. And then I moved to building the common ground, building the rapport, and I'm like, this is the most important step. And then I moved to qualification. Like, if you don't do qualification, you got nothing. This is the most important step. And they're like, whoa, which one is the most important step? And literally, if you look at each step, they're super critical.
Yeah.
Like, you can't, the only way for you to have a great experience by skipping steps is you have to work with people who had experience with you in the past. Then you can start skipping steps when you work with repeats or referrals, But if you're working with fresh people, the greeting is the most important step. It's the first impression, right? So that's when people decide whether, and when we have such a shaky profession and such a shaky reputation, it becomes even more important, right?
Yeah.
Because they're gonna assume you're a scumbag before they even get to know you. And if you suggest something with the greeting that you are, it will be case closed. They were like, yep, my assumption is confirmed. So what's some of the craziest greetings you've heard, from maybe beginner salespeople that you were like, wow, that's not good?
Well, it's funny because when we go through the training classes, we spend quite a bit of time on the greeting. I'll be honest with you, 10 steps, right? You got the greeting, you got fact finding, you got a trade, you got service walk, you got you got select a vehicle, presentation, demonstration, you got to write up, you got presenting numbers, negotiate, closing, and delivery, right? But I usually on my classes that I train on, I spend the most time on what I feel are the most important steps, which number 1 is the greeting, number 2 is fact finding, number 3 is presenting the numbers and negotiating and closing. So really, out of the 10 steps, we spend most of the time on the greeting, fact finding, presenting numbers, and negotiating and closing, because all the other stuff really falls into place. Your sale is made in the first 2 steps. That's it.
Yeah.
That's, your greeting is your first impression. You want to separate yourself from the masses in the greeting. You don't want your customer to think, oh, this guy's just like everybody else. You want them to think, man, we just ran into a professional, Ethel. This guy's on point. So when you make that good first impression, then you sit down with these people and you start to fact find professionally without a needs analysis sheet. I hate those things. You should know that stuff in your mind. You shouldn't have to pull out a sheet. Oh, okay. So, Mr. Jones, what kind of car are you interested in? And what's your trade in? And how much money were you? And what? I'm like, come on, man. That's amateur hour, baby. You should know that stuff in your head. You should pull out a blank sheet of paper and take notes. You don't need to pull out a form. Hey, when you go to the doctor, they pull out a form sheet. No, they ask you the questions because they already know. So, with that being said, your sale is in the greeting and in fact finding. And if you got to trade in, you got to do a trade walk. That's obviously important, but that's a pretty easy step. If you do service walks, which most people don't, but we train on it, and that could be the difference, in my opinion, between a sale and no sale. But most people think it's a waste of time, so they don't do it. And then, of course, you got to be good at doing some sort of presentation demonstration, but there's not a lot of talent out in the marketplace that does that. So what else you got to be good at? You got to be good at presenting numbers. And then once you present them, you got to be really good at being able to close the deal or get a commitment so you can write an offer to close the deal. So that's what we spend a lot of time on. And again, hey, I've been doing this, like I said, since 2009. We've mystery shopped, and I'm talking mystery shop. We've been face-to-face mystery shopping. I'm not talking over the phone. I'm talking where we actually go into another store. I know a lot of people don't like it. Oh, you're wasting somebody's time. Well, guess what? If you're in the sales environment, someone's going to waste your time. That's just part of it. Just get over it. But with that being said, when we've gone into these other stores, and I'm talking over 1,000 mystery shops, fact finding is atrocious. I mean, they try to start working a deal before they even ask you 2 or 3 questions. And again, it's like going into the doctor and the doctor asks you 1 or 2 questions, and all of a sudden he's writing a prescription. There you go, son.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So, hey, that's where I see a lot of people missing deals is they have no clue on what the customer's trying to do. They haven't asked enough questions. They don't know what they want. They don't know what they need. They don't know what their hot button is. They don't know what their dominant buying motive is. And they're just shooting in the dark. And when the customer says about it, they do because they don't know what they want.
In the beginning of my career, I can tell you that when I was inexperienced, I didn't ask those qualifying questions, number one, because I didn't know enough of them. And number two, I was a little scared. So there's a lot of assuming that's going on in the salesperson's mind. I call those salespeople motivators because they don't need much information to start selling. Somebody walks in and say, I'm looking for a Honda Civic, and say no more. Here's all the Honda Civics, and they go into my show. And then they find out that they have 3 repos and 400 credit score. So what do you think is the main mistake salespeople make during the qualification process?
Just they don't ask enough questions. They ask, like I said, it's like going into the doctor. Hey, what brings you in today, right? Well, I haven't been feeling good, doc. I woke up about a month ago. My head was hurting. I thought it would go away, and my back hurt, my feet hurt. I know it's not COVID. I was checked for that. And the doctor says, well, who else in the family has these symptoms? Well, nobody, just me. And this has been going on for how long? It's been about a month. Okay, great. He pulls out his pad and gives you his prescription. Now, the guy asked you 3 questions, and he's writing a prescription. What are you going to think? I'm going to be thinking, wait a minute. No blood test, no urine test, no ultrasound. I don't know, doc. I think I need to go get a second opinion. So that's what we do in the car business. A customer comes in, hey, what brought you in today? Well, I'm looking at your Civics, or I'm looking at your, your Accords or whatever. Great, follow me. And the next thing the salesperson's doing is writing a prescription. Here you go. What's the customer going to think? I don't know. This guy knows what I want. I don't know if he knows what I need. I don't know. This guy's he's no different than anybody else we talk to. And we're going to go check out another place, man. Thanks for your time.
I love that. So is it just because the lack of questions will suggest lack of interest, and the customers would just be turned off, like this person wants to sell me what they want to sell me. They don't care about what I want. But is it just the volume of questions or the quality of questions? Do you think there's some questions that now don't work as well as they used to 20 years ago? And, with political correctness and all those things that, people are so sensitive right now. Even comedians can't do their job anymore the way they used to, So Do you think that there are some questions that are definitely outdated and they do not ask questions like in your environment right now?
Well, I think, again, fact finding boils down to a couple of things. Number one, it's to try to find out the hows and the whys. You know, why they're here, what are they trying to accomplish today? That's the number one thing about fact. Number two is to build rapport and to get the people to know that they're sitting in front of a professional. Because when people feel that they are sitting in front of a professional that is different than everybody else that they've sat in front of, they're going to turn control over to you, and they're not going to be offended when you ask some of these questions. I'm not sure the questions you're talking about. I don't really feel that there's questions that I would have asked 20 or 30 years ago that I would be afraid to ask today. I don't think there's really one that I wouldn't ask. But I think a lot of it boils down to, hey, how comfortable are your customers with you? Do they feel that you're competent and confident that you're going to be able to handle what they want and their need? Now, hey, everybody's different, and as a salesperson, you gotta be good at reading people, and you have to be good at knowing who you're talking to. Number one, because hey, let's face it, depending on your customer, I might be sitting in front of a customer that I'm going to ask a lot more questions versus if I'm sitting in front of another type customer, I might not ask the same kind of questions, or I might ask different questions. So it really just depends on who you're sitting across from, which again is why this step is so important, is because you got to know who you're sitting with, number one, and you got to be able to ask the right questions to get the right information. Some people you might have to ask, 5, 6, 7, 8 questions. Others you might not have to ask that many. Others you might have to ask more. It just really depends. But it really, in my opinion, boils down to salespeople just not really knowing how to do it correctly or feeling comfortable enough to be able to do it correctly. And again, it's a training thing. It boils down to training. It's just like I said, these discovery sheets. Why do stores have discovery sheets? The reason they have discovery sheets is because their salespeople aren't trained well enough to where they can go and sit down with a customer, pull out a blank sheet of paper, and write the answers down because they already know the questions in their head. The reason why they have a discovery sheet is because they don't know the questions to ask, and they got to read them off a sheet. And again, it goes down to role playing. Hey, you could have a meeting tomorrow morning, managers. If there's any managers out here listening to this, you guys could have a 15-minute sales meeting tomorrow. Hey, let's just role play some fact finding. Let's come up with a couple scenarios. You got a guy that comes in. Hey, what brings you in today? What are you trying to accomplish today? Well, I'm looking for your 2000. I'm interested in your Ultimas, or I'm wanting to upgrade. Okay, so you got two different scenarios. Somebody wants to look at a specific car. Somebody wants an upgrade. Let's role play it out. Let's throw some questions out there. Let's get it to where we know this stuff backwards and forwards. So now when it comes game time, when you're actually sitting in front of somebody, you've made all your mistakes on the practice field. Now you're one-on-one with your customer. Hey, now the salespeople are going to feel more confident, more competent that they can get the information that they need, and they're going to build the rapport that they need to build with a customer. And hey, that's going to bode a long way into making something positive happen as opposed to missing a sale.
I love that. I'm with you 100% on that. Scott, in the next 3 minutes, we're running out of time, but in the next 3 minutes, could you please share with us some of your favorite closing tips?
I'll be honest, man. I think closing's way overrated. I'm like, if you follow me at all, to me, I wouldn't say I was like a master closer. I mean, I know how to close, and I know the closes, but my philosophy, probably more like yours, was to build a long-term business. And I mean, I don't know if you remember or not, but I've followed you back when you were selling cars. And I used to watch a lot of what you were doing. I said, that guy, he gets it. This guy right here understands how to sell, but he's got the mindset of the long-term salesperson, which is what you have to have. And because, you look at you and you look at other guys like, Frank Crinetti and of course, Ali Rita and these guys that are selling, 50, 60, 70, 80 cars a month or whatever, they don't have to close nobody, man. People come in and they lay down. They're not closing. They're just, writing deals up. So to me, that's really where you need to get. You don't have to, be so, closing is because you don't have a pipeline. That's the only reason why you need to close, is because, hey, I got nobody else behind me. I need to close this deal or I'm not going to eat. So, as far as closing, hey, you got to, in order to close, you got to set the close up. So in other words, you got to do a good job all the way through the greeting, the fact finding, assuming that you did all the right steps. Closing really should be a pretty easy step. It really should be. It all should just kind of fall into place. And really, because most stores are using a full disclosure worksheet as opposed to a Foursquare, I think it's a lot easier today to close on the first pencil than
Yeah.
what it was, years ago. So, but it's still, the stores that I'm in, we're two of our stores are freaking 90% subprime. The other two stores are, I don't know, 40%, somewhere in that range. So we deal with a lot of subprime traffic, which, hey, how do you close those deals? It's all about payments and down payments. You get the payment right, you get the down payment right, and you got a deal. You got to get co-signers, that kind of thing. So,
Pretty
you
easy.
know, when it comes to closing, it's a lot of it's payment. You're $50 a part or you're $60 a part. Hey, sir, man, that's only a freaking pack of cigarettes a day, right? Actually, cigarettes are more than that, aren't they?
Oh yeah, they're expensive. I love this answer, and the reason why I love it is because I didn't enjoy the closing. I didn't enjoy the fact finding. I didn't enjoy the building rapport part because it slowed me down and I couldn't sell 3 4 cars a day.
Right.
So when you work with repeat and referral clients, you don't
Yeah.
have to deal with objections and you don't have to close.
Right.
Because the repeat buyer, you remember exactly how the close happened last time as soon as
Mhm.
the person shows up, and they remember exactly how the close happened last time. So you could easily say, hey, just like last time, we can do this. How does
Yeah.
that sound? Oh, last time you did this, and now I'm not going to fall for this. So this time we're going to do this. So it's very easy to communicate with repeat buyers. Referral buyers are even easier and faster because they believe the person who sent them there. So they've
Mhm.
already made the decision to buy from you. And that's the hardest part. They come to you and they surrender. They say, Frank sent me. He said, you're the best and
Yep.
you will take care of me. So you don't
Yep.
have to sell, you don't have to sell anything. At this point, it's just finding the car, laying out the terms and conditions, and
Mhm.
lean on the pen, my friend, just
Yeah.
like you did.
So let me ask you, how come there's not more people like you? How come there's not more people like Frank and Allie and some of these other guys that we know? How come there's such a small little island of those guys? Because the way I look at it, you did it and they're doing it. Why can't more people do it?
Because there's still enough opportunities that come from BDC and the low hanging fruit and the scarcity mindset of a salesperson, the transactional mindset of the salesperson, the lack of commitment. 90% of salespeople have lack of commitment, scarcity mindset, transactional mindset, bad leadership, bad management. The leadership, 90% of the leadership comes from the negotiations era. So
Yeah.
they worked with so many tools that our salespeople can't use anymore.
Mhm.
Before the informational age, clients didn't have any information. So those same managers that are superstars now and run big stores, they used to have all the leverage in negotiations. 20 years ago, 30 years ago, prices were not advertised. You know what I mean? People didn't know how much, what the cost is, what the invoice is, what the holdback is. Now
Mhm.
our clients are very, very well educated. So it's not a matter of outsmarting them. It's not a matter of tricking them. It's not a matter of folding papers and showing them something that hopefully they don't catch. It's a matter of being radically transparent
Mhm.
and just building the relationships. Because when you're a relational salesperson, people do business with you because of the relationship, not because of the product, not because of the relationship is the senior, is the main motivator for them to do
Yeah.
business. So they're a lot more flexible. I've had customers that share with me, 4 months after they bought the car, they said, I couldn't afford that payment, but I
Mhm.
felt so uncomfortable
Mhm.
asking you to lower it, or I felt so uncomfortable telling you. They
Mhm.
would come to trade in the car after 6 months and be like, I couldn't afford that at the time, but I didn't want to give you a hard time. I'm like, man, it's okay, we'll fix it.
Yeah.
And that just tells me that so many objections go out the window, almost zero objections you have to deal with when you focus on self-generated leads, repeat referrals. And if that's your core pipeline filled with those clients, all problems go away, and it's fun to sell cars. But
Yeah,
hey,
it's a whole different business when you tap into that side of the business. It's totally transformational, and
yeah,
there, once you get there, there's no going back either. And
no, I saw
the
cars.
is getting there, but it's not that hard. It just takes a plan, and that's part of the problem. Is like you said, it's a management thing. Hey, the managers that are sitting in the seat, they didn't do that, so they don't know how to do it,
Yeah,
and because of that, they can't teach it. So they teach what they know, and they teach what they did, which is hawk the lot, be a lot lizard, and get as many people in front of you as you can, and let's try to close them down the best we can. And that's again why there's such
like
problems.
because they're from different eras. It's like people from different businesses talk to each other. The business has changed so much, and when you haven't talked to a customer in 20 years, when you haven't gotten away from the tower and actually go and close few deals a day, just so you can keep your, keep yourself relevant, you have no idea what these salespeople are going through out there. For obvious things like the price is advertised in 100 places, and you go there and you say, "Oh, you don't qualify for this price because of this and that," and then the salesperson feels awkward because, dude, it's obvious. Like, these people have so much data. I can't
Right.
just go there and literally lie to them or say something that would sound legitimate or believable for the average human being. And then they go back to the tower, and the manager yells at them, "You're a weak stick. I used to do this." So they deal with self-sabotage, they deal with guilt, with shame, with all those feelings, and eventually they're like, "Man, I'd rather drive Uber and Lyft or go to do Amazon for half of the money, but at least people are not yelling at me for, and they're not being unreasonable
Right.
because so that's a huge disconnect." But Scott, I love our conversation, and I know that you're going to be a guest on our show again. With hopefully you accept my invitation again, because you're a great trainer, and you share a lot of insights with our audience. So thank you so much for this. We'll
You
catch
bet.
you again. Anything you want to say in closing about the future in the car business?
I'm not too good of a prognosticator, so to say. So I always tell people it's like betting on sporting events. I always tell people, if you want to know who's going to win a sporting event, just pick the team that I pick. Just pick against me, and you'll pretty much win. So I never pick the right team for some reason. So same thing here. Where's the car business going? I really have no idea. I mean, obviously, especially with the COVID thing right now, buying stuff online is I haven't seen statistics, so I don't really know how much more business has been done without stepping foot in a dealership. But again, you got the Carvanas out there, and you got, I don't even know what the other one is. There's one or two others out there. But let's face it, the landscaping is changing. Where's it going? I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see. It's going to be it should be an interesting ride. But I will say this, that in order to be competitive, everybody's going to have to raise the bar within themselves and within their stores to be competitive and to set yourself as a differentiator from everybody else in the space. That much I will definitely say is a fact.
That's true, brother. Thank you so much for this. We'll see you again, my friend.
All right, man. Have a good night. Thanks.
All right, everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us this Monday. If you guys watched that show, you probably picked up some great golden nuggets from Scott and myself. If you're interested in working together, definitely go on velco.co, or if you would like to hire me as your mentor, go to velcotuchiev.com. It was a pleasure to be your host tonight. Join us again next Monday. We're going to have a very interesting guest next Monday, Alex Flores. He's a GM from Texas. Uh, Breaking records right now. He's a GM of a Chevy dealership. So join us next Monday. Alex is going to be our guest, and we're going to discuss relevant things about the car business. So prepare your questions, and I'll catch you again next week.